If someone had told me at 16 that love would nearly destroy me, I would have laughed in their face. Back then, I believed love was beautiful, pure, magical. I watched my parents hold hands even when they argued, and I thought, this is what I want. A man to call mine. Someone to protect me, understand me, and maybe someday build a home with me. But I was wrong. The first time I fell in love, I was barely out of secondary school. His name was Chuka. He had this charming gap tooth and a voice that melted every no into yes. He made me feel special, wanted. He told me I was different from other girls. And I believed him. I gave him everything, my time, my attention, my body, my dreams. And just like that, I became his puppet. Chuka didn't beat me. Well, his own violence was the kind that didn't leave bruises. He broke me with silence. He ignored my tears. He flirted with my friends. He made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I had to keep trying, keep proving I deserved him. The day I found out he got another girl pregnant, he told me it was my fault. Said I was too clingy, too emotional. I begged him not to leave. Imagine me begging. That day, something in me cracked, but it didn't fully break. Not yet. That was just the beginning. Please subscribe. I was 16 when I first mistook attention for love. 16, wide-eyed, full of hope and stupid. Not the type of stupid that comes from ignorance. No, mine was the kind that was born from dreams. Big, soft dreams of fairy tale endings and holding hands in the rain. I had watched too many Nollywood movies, read too many romance novels, and believed love would be my rescue, my soft landing, my miracle. You see, I wasn't born into much. My parents were simple people. Papa sold second-hand shoes in the market. Mama was a trader too. She hawked vegetables from morning till dusk, with a scarf that always had sweat marks and hands that smelled like uga leaves and groundnut oil. But what we lacked in money, they tried to make up for with discipline. We weren't allowed to visit neighbors often. No makeup, no trousers, no loose talking. I was raised like a glass cup that could break with one mistake. We lived in a face-my-face-you compound in Surulere. 12 rooms, 1 toilet, 1 kitchen, and too many secrets. Everyone knew everyone's business. You couldn't cough without someone asking if you were pregnant. I grew up learning how to hide things. My thoughts, my voice, even my joy. Because joy in that place was a fragile thing. People didn't like to see you shine too much. Not when their own lives were full of shadows. Still, I believed I was destined for something greater. I dreamed of becoming a journalist. I used to fold empty notebooks and pretend they were newspapers, reading headlines to my younger brother, Ifani, who always clapped and said, "One day you'll be on TV." I wanted to wear suits, hold microphones, and ask important people difficult questions. I studied hard, prayed harder. I didn't go to parties. I didn't wear tight clothes. I didn't even have a phone until I turned 15. And even then, it was Papa's old Nokia with a cracked screen. I was the good girl, the obedient one, the one teachers pointed at and said, "Be like her." And for the most part, I liked that label. Gave me a sense of safety, a kind of invisible shield that said, "Nothing bad can happen to you if you just follow the rules." But Chuka broke all those rules. His name alone sounded like music. He was everything I had never experienced. Bold, confident, sure of himself in a way I secretly admired. He had a small goatee, wore perfume that lingered long after he passed, and he spoke like someone who had seen the world. The first time he asked for my number, my hands trembled as I typed it. Felt like sin, but it also felt like flight. He messaged me that same night. "You have a beautiful soul. I can feel it from here." Nobody had ever said anything like that to me. Felt like love, or what I thought love was supposed to feel like. From that day, my life began to revolve around his messages, his calls, his attention. I would stay up late just to hear his voice. Sometimes he'd call at 11:45 p.m., and I'd sneak into the corridor barefoot with a wrapper around me, just to whisper sweet nothings into a phone that barely had network. I was 16. I didn't know then that love isn't always loud. That sometimes it's the quiet, unseen manipulations that do the worst damage. Chuka didn't beat me. Well, his own violence was the kind that didn't leave bruises. He broke me with silence. He made me feel like I was lucky to have him, like I had to earn his love every single day. When I asked him where he went or why he didn't call, he'd snap, "Must you know everything? You day monitor me." Began to shrink myself. Smiled less. Oh, less. I stopped writing in my journal. Even my dreams of being a journalist started to feel foolish. Who was I to think I could be somebody? Then came the betrayal. He got another girl pregnant. And not just any girl. A girl with full hips, long weaves, and an iPhone I could only dream of holding. When I found out and confronted him, he looked me straight in the eye and said, You were just convenient. Child's play. She's a woman. You're a girl." Those words broke me. Not just my heart, my soul. I didn't eat for 3 days. I couldn't talk. I'd lie on my mattress and stare at the ceiling, replaying every moment, wondering what I did wrong. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't pretty enough. Maybe I should have worn tighter clothes. Maybe if I had curves like the other girls. Mama noticed. She asked what was wrong, but I couldn't tell her. How do you tell your mother that the boy who made you feel seen now made you feel invisible? It was my first heartbreak. But it wouldn't be my last. If only I knew. Chuka was just the beginning. The others would come, each one worse than the last. Each one leaving scars deeper than the one before. There are some memories I wish I could erase. Not because they were loud or violent, but because they were quiet and slow, like a tear that slips down your cheek in the dark when no one is watching. This one haunts me. It happened just weeks before Chuka finally left me for good. He had invited me over to his place. It wasn't the first time. He'd promised he just wanted us to talk, to spend quality time. That's what he called it. I went like I always did. Heart in my hands, trust in my eyes, love in every shaky step I took. We laughed that day, played music, shared chin-chin. I remember sitting beside him on his old bed, my head on his shoulder, feeling like I belonged. For a moment it felt like a dream, a glimpse into a future I thought we would have. But the mood changed. He wanted more than conversation. He moved closer, touched my arm, whispered things that made me blush and look away. I was unsure, nervous, still figuring out who I was, what I wanted. He wasn't forceful, not in the way people usually think. But there's a kind of pressure that doesn't need words. A kind that makes you feel like if you say no, you might lose everything. So I stayed. And I let things go further than I had ever planned. When I left his place that evening, something inside me felt different. I couldn't name it, but it followed me home like a shadow. For days, I couldn't look Mama in the eye. Couldn't pray. I couldn't smile. Then the whispers started. It was subtle at first. The way people looked at me in church. The way a boy at the junction laughed when I passed. The strange messages from numbers I didn't know. I kept asking myself, did I do something wrong? Did I say too much? Did I trust too easily? I never got answers. But somehow I knew. Something had been shared. Maybe a story. Maybe something else. Whatever it was, it reduced me to a joke. And I became the topic of cruel laughter I couldn't hear, but could always feel. I never got to ask Chuka. He stopped picking my calls. Then one day he blocked me. Just like that. As if I was a phase. A chapter he had read and finished. What hurt the most wasn't just that he left. It was how he left me. Confused. Embarrassed. Like I had handed over pieces of myself I couldn't take back. And yet, I missed him. I hated myself for it, but I did. That's what heartbreak does. Doesn't just break you. It makes you question the very things that once made you whole. He was my first. And because of how it ended, every love after him had to deal with the broken pieces he left behind. After Chuka, something inside me changed. It wasn't loud like a crack. It was quiet, like a thread snapping somewhere deep within. The kind of break you don't hear but you feel every day after. I began to carry myself differently. My walk slowed. My laugh became rare. My voice, once so eager to answer in class, grew soft and unsure. I didn't know how to explain it. Not to Mama. Not to myself. Not even to God. I'd wake up some mornings and stare at the ceiling for hours. Just lying there. Not moving. Not thinking. Just existing. I went through the motions, school, chores, church, but I wasn't there. I was like a radio with the volume turned all the way down. Felt small. Forgotten. And the worst part. I blamed myself. Maybe if I hadn't trusted him. Maybe if I had worn something longer. Maybe if I had said no more clearly. Maybe if I had told someone sooner. Maybe. Every maybe was a cut on my soul. The stares from the compound women didn't help. I began to feel eyes on me even when no one was looking. I'd overhear whispers. Faint, cruel, sharp. She don grow breast, now she don day waka. Na so all of them day start, pretending like angels. She never reach 18 and she don day follow boy. Each word hit me like stones. Please subscribe. I avoided church. I avoided mirrors. I avoided myself. There were days I'd kneel beside my bed, tears soaking my nightgown, asking God to forgive me. Not because I fully understood what I had done wrong, but because I felt filthy. Damaged, like something no longer whole. And then, one evening I looked at my reflection, really looked. My eyes were tired. My lips cracked. My spirit gone. That was when I made the vow. I said it out loud, with trembling lips and a heart that still ached. Never again. Never again will I let any man make me feel this worthless. It was a promise. To myself. To my future. To the girl I used to be. I folded all the notes Chuka had ever written and burnt them. Watched the fire eat up every lie he ever fed me. I deleted his number. Tore the pages of my journal where I had written his name 1,000 times. It felt like killing something inside me, but it also felt like planting a seed for someone new. I told myself I would focus on my studies. That love was a distraction. Trap. A foolish thing girls fall into when they don't know their worth. I told myself I was done. No more heartbreak. No more mistakes. No more boys. But life, as I would later learn, doesn't listen to the promises we make in pain. And love, true or false, has a way of finding you when you least expect it. I met Johnny 2 years after Chuka broke me. By then, I had wrapped my heart in layers of fear and silence. I didn't wear bright colors anymore. I barely smiled. I had become the girl people looked past. But Johnny saw me. He really saw me. It was at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. I was seated quietly in a corner, sipping malt, when he walked over and asked if I wanted chicken or fish. He served me, then sat beside me, and for the first time in years, I laughed. It was small, unsure, but it was real. He was gentle. He listened more than he spoke. He asked questions that made me feel seen, not judged. And when I told him nervously that I was not ready for love, he smiled and said, "Let's just be friends. No pressure." That friendship became the safest thing I had known in a long time. He checked in on me, walked me to school sometimes, helped me understand mathematics, and called me brilliant like he meant it. Slowly I found myself falling again, but this time I thought I was falling into peace. Johnny was different, or so I thought. The first time I met his mother, she didn't look at me. Not once. She asked him in my presence, "So this is the one you want to waste your degree on?" He laughed it off. I didn't. Later, his younger sister stared at me for a long time and said, "You don't look like someone who knows how to cook well. My brother deserves better." Again he laughed. I smiled politely, but something in me shivered. Then came his father, strong voice, big presence. The man didn't ask about me. He asked about my family. Which village? Who's her father? What does he do? When Johnny told him Papa was just a carpenter, the man grunted and turned away. That evening I overheard him say, "She'll be useless to this family. I want a girl that will add to our legacy, not eat from it." Legacy. That was the word they worshipped. Johnny was their trough. Johnny was their trophy, the first and only university graduate in a family of proud, loud traders and mechanics. They wore his success like a badge. And I was a threat to that badge. Not because I wasn't good, but because I wasn't theirs. Soon they began to test me. His mother would call me to help her wash clothes when I visited. His aunt would send me to the market and expect me back in 20 minutes, with 10 errands. His younger sister would throw tantrums just to see if I would kneel and apologize. Tried. God knows I tried. I scrubbed, smiled. I served. I swallowed insults that would make a goat cry. But it was never enough. They didn't want a wife for Johnny. They wanted a slave. A domestic trophy. Someone they could parade as the girl who was lucky to marry our Johnny. And Johnny, he loved me, yes. But he was weak. He never stood up for me. He would say, just ignore them. Or, they'll come around. But they never did. Instead, one day his mother called me aside and said, "You're not welcome here. If you really love Johnny, you'll leave so he can marry someone worthy." That night I cried in his arms. And he said nothing. Not one word. Just held me like silence could fix what his voice refused to defend. A week later I stopped visiting. A month later he stopped calling. And just like that, love slipped away. Not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't protected. He didn't chase me away. His family did. But he let them. And that, perhaps, is the loudest kind of betrayal, the kind that wears silence as a disguise. There are 2 days I can never forget. 2 days in Johnny's house that changed something inside me. Not gradually, not silently, but violently, like a mirror cracking in slow motion. You see the break, but you can't stop it. The first happened on a Satui. His mother had called earlier that week to say she wanted me to help her clean the house properly. I agreed, hoping it was a chance to bond with her. Maybe if she saw how eager I was to please, she would soften. I arrived early. Before 8 a.m. She gave me a wrapper tied around her waist and pointed at the bathroom. That bathroom. God. It hadn't been cleaned in weeks. Mold, stains, hair clumps, even a dead rat in the corner. I blinked, thinking she was joking. But she only hissed and said, "When you become a wife, this is your job. If you cannot clean small bathroom, how will you clean a whole marriage?" I knelt and scrubbed. 4 hours. No gloves. No thank you. Just constant judgment. By noon she had added the compound gutters to my list. I was bent over, dirty water splashing on my skirt, when Johnny's uncle came by with a visitor. A man in suit. He looked at me, squatting in filth, and whispered loudly, "Is this the girl Johnny is marrying?" "This is the one." They laughed. His uncle said, "At least she's useful for something." I wanted the ground to open. But I stayed. Then, around 5 p.m. as I was finishing up, I collapsed. Right there in the compound. My knees gave in. My head spun. My breath refused to flow properly. I heard someone shout my name. Then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was in Johnny's room. And guess who was angry? His mother. She stood over me with a frown and said, "You want to use sickness to escape work? This is how your type behave. Lazy and full of tricks." Johnny held my hand. But again he said nothing. Just silence. The second experience came a month later. Please subscribe. It was during Easter. Johnny had invited me to spend the weekend. I brought foodstuff. Woke early to cook. Did everything they asked. Then came lunch. As we sat to eat, his aunt, the loudest one, picked up my soup, sniffed it and said, "So this is what your parents taught you to cook? Tufia. This thing smells like it was prepared by a dog." Froze. Her children laughed. Then, without warning, she poured the soup into the sink. All of it. My heart shattered. I stood there, shaking, gripping the chair so hard my fingers turned white. Johnny's father said, "She better learn fast or leave." And again. Johnny said nothing. I excused myself, stepped outside and broke down. I cried till I couldn't breathe. That evening I packed my bag. No drama. No goodbye. Just left. And as I walked down the street, tears blurring my vision, I knew. I was done. Done with begging to be accepted. Done with shrinking myself to fit into spaces that hated me. Done with thinking that love could survive in a house where I was never seen as human. That night I made another vow. I will never again enter a house that makes me forget my worth. Not even for love. I met Emeka during my National Youth Service year in Abuja. He was charming, articulate, and seemed to have a clear vision for his future. He told me he was single, and his demeanor supported that claim. He spoke of dreams of building a life together, and I, yearning for stability, believed him. Our relationship blossomed. He was attentive, supportive, and made me feel cherished. I avoided meeting his family, haunted by past experiences, and he never pressured me. This distance made it easier for him to maintain his facade. 2 years passed, and I was deeply invested in our relationship. Then, one evening, everything unraveled. His wife, who had been abroad with their 2 daughters, returned unexpectedly. She confronted me, accusing me of being a homewrecker. The confrontation escalated, and she involved the police, leading to my arrest. I spent 2 days in a cell, overwhelmed by shame and confusion. Emeka eventually came to bail me out, but the damage was done. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and broken. The man I had trusted had deceived me, and I was left to bear the consequences. Loving Emeka was like walking through a fog. You think you see clearly until you realize you're lost. At first, he was everything I had prayed for. He listened. He spoke gently. He had dreams that matched mine. He'd say things like, "I want us to grow together," or "I see my future in your eyes." And after the ruins Johnny's family left me in, I clung to those words like breath. He made me feel like I was healing. But the healing was only on the surface. Underneath, I was bleeding in silence. Because Emeka was a master at control. Not through anger, but through love twisted into guilt. He started small. "Don't go out today, I just want to spend time with you. You talk to your male colleagues too much, people might think you're cheap. You know I've never trusted easily. Don't betray that." I stopped going out. I stopped talking to people. I stopped living. Soon he was choosing what I wore, what I said, who I talked to. If I questioned him, he'd pull away emotionally. Silent treatments that lasted days. I'd beg him, apologize, even when I hadn't done anything wrong. And every time he came back, it felt like I had won a battle. Please subscribe. But I was only losing myself. One day he slapped me. It was over a text message a male friend had sent congratulating me for my NYSC Community Development Award. He said, "So you're now collecting praises from other men?" The slap wasn't loud, but the betrayal rang through my skull for days. He cried afterward, apologized, bought me gifts, and I forgave him. Because somehow I had come to believe that I was the one who had to fix him. That I could love him into becoming the man he once pretended to be. It never happened. Instead, the lies grew. He'd disappear for days, claiming business trips. I believed him. I defended him. Even when my instincts screamed otherwise, I told myself, "He's been hurt before. He just needs time." Then the day came. The day his wife returned from the States. A tall woman with fierce eyes and a voice that could silence thunder. She stormed into the compound with her daughters, holding a wedding album in one hand and rage in the other. "So you're the one," she spat at me. "You think you can replace me? You think I'll leave my husband for a local girl with no shame?" I was too stunned to speak. Before I could even defend myself, the police arrived. She had filed a report. Adultery, homewrecking, emotional harassment. All lies, but dressed in facts I had never been told. The neighbors gathered. My name became whispers in every ear. I was dragged like a thief in the night, pushed into a police van like a criminal. 2 days in that cell. 2 days of no sunlight, no justice, no voice. I wept until my tears dried. And who came to bail me out? Mika. The same man who betrayed me stood at the station like a savior. Paid my bail. Whispered, "I'm sorry you had to go through this." And just like that he walked away. No fight. No explanation. No remorse. I walked out of that station with no dignity left. No tears. Just a hollow chest and a vow that echoed louder than ever. I will never ever trust a man's mouth over my own intuition again. After Emeka, I stopped wearing bright colors. I stopped laughing loudly. I stopped trusting my own instincts, because every time I had believed in someone, I ended up broken, scattered, humiliated. But one thing Emeka's betrayal gave me was time to think. Alone. In silence. Without distractions. And in those long, heavy nights when sleep refused to come, I began to ask myself the hard questions. Why do I keep falling into the same kind of pain? Why do I ignore the red flags, even when they slap me in the face? And slowly the answers came to me, not in thunderclaps but in soft, aching truths. I was too eager to be loved. That was my weakness. My vulnerability. I wasn't in love with those men. Not really. I was in love with the idea of being chosen. Of finally being enough for someone. Of being called mine, in a world that often made me feel invisible. I grew up in a house where love had conditions. Where silence was mistaken for peace. And pleasing others was mistaken for kindness. So, when a man smiled and called me special, I wrapped my whole world around that word like a gift I didn't believe I deserved. But no more. More. I told myself that if I ever entered another relationship, I wouldn't go in as the receiver. I would be the actor, the decider, the one who chooses, not the one begging to be chosen. I stopped trying to earn love like it was a salary. I started seeing love as a gift, one I had every right to give or take back. I stopped romanticizing suffering. Stopped calling pain patience. Stopped calling gaslighting misunderstanding. I became a student of silence. I watched people more than I listened to their words. I studied body language, tone, eye contact. I learned how men use love to trap, to tame, to control. And in that learning, became dangerous, because I realized I was no longer a prey. I was no longer the girl who waited to be picked. I had become a woman who knows. Who sees? Please subscribe. Who chooses? So, when the fourth man came, the one who almost drove me to the edge, I didn't fall blindly. I walked in with eyes wide open. But even then, nothing could have prepared me for what he brought into my life. After Emeka, something in me died. But something else was born. I used to think survival meant not crying, not breaking down. But I learned that survival sometimes means breaking all the way so you can rebuild from scratch. I became intentional with my silence. I became deliberate with my words. I stopped explaining myself to people who had already made up their minds about me. For the first time in my life, I began to love myself out loud. I started going to places alone. Sitting in cafes with a book in hand and no fear in my chest. I dressed for myself. Not for validation, not to attract or impress. I wore strength like perfume, and suddenly, even the air around me changed. I stopped trying to look approachable. I stopped over-apologizing. I stopped saying it's okay when it wasn't. I became aware of how much I had been trained to shrink, bend, to make space for others while robbing myself of joy. No more. I went to therapy, read books, watched how healed women spoke, with firmness, not aggression, with softness but no fear. I learned to say no, with my full chest, without explanation. I learned that when a man says, "You're too much," it's often because he's not enough. I unfollowed the voices that glorified pain in the name of love. I deleted old photos, burned the journals that still smelled like him. I stood before the mirror one night and whispered, "You're not a victim anymore. You're not begging anymore. You are the storm now." That night, I slept deeply for the first time in years. You see, I didn't become bitter. Became wise. Love, I told myself, is not supposed to make you forget who you are. Should remind you, return you, rebuild you. So, if ever I was to love again, it would not be with desperation. It would be with discernment. I wouldn't run after love like a thirsty child. I would walk, chin up, heart guarded, and eyes open. Because I knew now. A woman who has suffered and survived no longer looks for fairy tales. She writes her own story with fire in her pen. Please subscribe and like and write your comment in the comment section and press the notification button to be notified whenever we drop another intriguing story like this.